And we are back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Do you like how my voice totally changes for the
Yes, your voice totally changes for Starfleet Boy. It's very exciting.
I like that. You should do the whole show like that. Today we have a special guest star. It's Catterday. So we have Arthur on the seat.
Welcome to the show, Arthur.
Okay,
maybe we shouldn't.
we should keep our day jobs. What is our day job? Anyways, we can't talk about this. You haven't seen it yet, but I just want to show off that I am supporting Solo, a Star Wars story, because there's apparently a lot of controversy around this film. That was my Solo moment. Got a good feeling about this, Humbert.
I have nothing to say as I have not seen the film.
But you are going to go see it, right?
At some point, I'm sure I will.
You're so done with all the fandoms. I love it.
I have decided to disengage from the fandom.
But are we gonna go to that SuperCon thing that's coming up? Are you going to that?
I don't think so, because it's in Fort Lauderdale and it's expensive. All those autographs, they start to add up. I mean, there's a lot of people whom I would like to get autographs from, and Emma would be excited because she loves Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh,
and they're having a reunion there, but
wow.
I mean, it's that or not going to somewhere. We've got a lot of big shows coming up on our concert.
Oh yeah,
train.
That's right. You do awesome on that train.
The great Phil Collins will be returning to the stage, so I don't know. We'll see.
I can't wait to see your photos from that. Which, by the way, do you want to promote your is your concert photography a public thing? No. He's like, no, it's not private. Okay, thank you.
I mean,
well, I'm happy to have seen it then.
Yeah, no.
Well, if anyone wants to hire me for concert photography, I will pass them on to you. But I'm not sure you want to go to some of these concerts that I get invited to.
Yeah, no. I keep my thing purely amateur. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. So,
speaking of amateur, Star Trek: The Next Generation Redemption Part 1. There's not really much we can say about this episode except that it's phenomenal. I can tell you that as per tradition, when it's an episode where there's no debating about its quality, it automatically gets a 10 from me. So here it is, the 10.
And I give it, of course, the correct answer is that it is a 10.
Excellent. I didn't feel that way when I was a kid, though.
Really?
Yeah, I
am shocked.
The Klingon stories were so tedious to me because I was more interested in Strange New Worlds at that time.
You're kidding me.
But also because I was racist against Klingons because of the original series. Like, we hadn't gotten Star Trek 6, I don't think, yet. So I was like, I hate Klingons. Don't trust them.
But what about Worf?
Don't trust them. Worf was starting to rim on me. I still always felt disappointed whenever he would go off and leave like in this episode. I think I was really disappointed as a kid that he left the Enterprise, because I would never do that if I were a Klingon that were in his situation. If I were Worf, No, but now I'm an adult.
This is interesting.
There's complicated life than just the rules, Doctor.
Wow, fascinating. I had a completely different reaction to this episode when I was growing up. I thought it was just.
I know you were focused on the Duras sisters and their outfit.
No,
I remember,
that was not me.
I remember. Many were focused on it in our discussions from those days.
I was
the whole world was focused. How could you say it wasn't you? Everyone in Star Trek fandom was focused on the Duras sisters, the pair of them. You are a liar, sir. I caught you in a lie.
I thought it was. I remember just really loving the episode.
I do remember you loving it,
and it was one of the best cliffhangers Star Trek had. I mean, obviously the Borg one is the best, but this is, for me, I think it ranks as the second best.
The end of the beginning of the season I remember very fondly, because this is around the time that our group came together, the Galactic Heroes. Is
this our first cliffhanger or no?
This will be no. I think we're post this, but this season,
right.
Season 5, 6, and 7 are our core. That's the seasons that we were like having our get-togethers and we had our original discussions about Star Trek: The Next Generation took place around this season. So this is exciting because now we can start remembering.
You'll start remembering. I don't remember any of it, but you'll remember them. Them in post.
Those are some of my fondest memories. We had a great time talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're doing it again. But I hate to interrupt you. What else did you want to say about this awesome episode?
No, that I just have very fond memories of that walk that Worf does.
That's right.
At the end, and the whole, you got the whole honor guard thing going, and then you got the core cast waiting for him at the transporter, and I just thought, of course, naive me thinking Worf is leaving the show.
Oh no, I think I thought that too, actually.
And I mean, I knew that there would be. I mean, I knew that obviously, he would be back, but that I thought, the show did somehow, the show would kind of wrap up Worf's story off Enterprise, and he would just not return to the Enterprise,
right?
And at the time I was watching Next Generation, I was watching Blake 7, which was on PBS. Which is, I've always said, it's the best science fiction show ever made. I mean, I think Blake 7 beats everything, even Star Trek. And that's a show that was daring enough to be called Blake 7 and completely change its cast to the point where Blake wasn't even around. So, I mean, I was totally into this idea of, like, from season to season, you would just mix things up and you're like, you have no idea what's happening next.
That's awesome.
So I was very excited by this idea of, Worf leaves and maybe we get somebody else, just like we had seen Crusher leave.
Right.
And we got Pulaski for a year.
That I'm just realizing that the actual show, Star Trek: The Next Generation, is very casual and informal with how the actors come and go. As we see in this episode, we have Denise Crosby returning,
and that was the other thing, is when she finally comes forth out of the shadows after 2 episodes,
which at that time, as I think I've said before, I don't even remember that being like a suspicion. It was just all of a sudden, whoa.
Right. Yeah, I had no idea who the hell it was. I mean,
what did she say? She's like, humans have a way of.
I think humans have a way of turning up when you least expect them. Like, boom! Holy shit!
Yeah. Now I appreciate this episode as an adult in a way that I never appreciated as a kid. Of course, of course, this time I think I was focused. Well, I guess we should do the episode summary.
Oh, do we need to do one? Okay.
No, it's such a great episode. I think we have to give it a formal summary. I mean, that's the only thing that's not casual and informal on Starfleet, because I think there's been an episode summary for all 127 episodes.
I'll grant you that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And would you do this one and I'll do a slideshow, or do you want to do the slideshow and I'll do the summary?
A slideshow.
I was thinking of incorporating a slideshow during the summary, like of images that you find on Google from this episode.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing you have to discuss like before we go on the air.
That's all right. It's like a
slideshow. Where did we have this conversation? Right now,
it's casual. We're having it right now. It's a casual and informal conversation. We're having it on the air. This is just invented. It just that's the miracle of like modern times, Doctor. What year did you think you were in, Doctor? Welcome to 2018. We are in a time of
I'm not prepared for either of them, the summary nor the slideshow.
You're not going to give the summary.
I mean, I guess I'll give the summary.
You're so good. You're the best at the summary.
No, I'm not the best at the summary.
I said after me.
I'm trying to remember the.
Oh, let me get the slideshow.
Well, Picard is finishing his part in crowning Gowron, Emperor of the Klingon Empire.
Well, okay. I'm gonna help you out here.
Worf
is doing his martial arts, and Picard comes in.
Oh no, I'm not doing it like that. I'm just going broad strokes here, man.
But that's such a great scene.
Broad strokes. Well, you want to talk about it? Go ahead, talk about it, and then I'll go back to the summary.
Fine, real quick.
Don't you think this just requires a Klingon response?
Exactly.
That's what you want to talk about. Go ahead, talk about it.
Yes. All right, I got it.
You love it when Picard is all Klingon.
He's so good. He's so good. Patrick Stewart is so good in this episode. I can't. I wrote down like
patience is a human virtue, but don't you believe the situation calls for a Klingon response, Worf?
Doctor, you have manipulated the situation with the skill of a Romulan.
Welcome to Picard's best lines from
come on, they saved all of them for this episode. That's what I And then and we have to talk about the Guinan scene. She has to come down to level 14 to
okay.
Sorry.
And Worf is just completely
I'm out of control.
Flustered by it.
Doctor, I'm out of control.
Like what? What are you? For one thing, he's like, "What are you even doing here? Why aren't you, wiping the bar down at 10 forward?" And then she's like, "Oh, she claims it's quiet up there. Like it's ever quiet at 10 forward." I mean, what is 3 a.m.? It's
the best moments. Kern, of course, a famous Star Trek alumnus. And what's his name, Doctor?
He's a Candyman, isn't he?
I know he is. But what's the actor's name? I can't remember.
Candyman. Not that Candyman.
That song in the Candyman movie?
The Candyman. No, I wish it was. I don't know. I've never seen the Candyman. But I do love Sammy Davis Jr. Anyhow, so going back to the summary, so Picard
I'm gonna be so
returns to the Klingon homeworld to finish
Tony
off
Todd.
Tony Todd, the great Tony Todd.
Sorry for not remembering your name, Tony Todd. Okay, go on.
And so he thinks he's okay. Gowron's going to be Chancellor or whatever, and the Duras sisters show up, and they're like, "Guess what? we found a kid." And then that kind of throws a spanner in the works, and suddenly Picard has to decide whether or not this quote-unquote son of Duras has a claim to the throne. And
can I just say, for Game of Thrones fans, this is the first Joffrey. Like, this is Joffrey. It's like, go on.
I have to tell you, one of my favorite parts of this episode is when Gowron, he comes aboard the Enterprise, and he speaks with Picard and Riker and all that stuff, and then he leaves the ready room, and Picard tells him, "Worf, escort Gowron to the transporter room, and they're in the transporter room, and everyone is acting Next Generation style. Everything's normal. And then Worf is like, "I must speak with you." Suddenly you're like, "What?" And then Gowron is like, "I do not speak to traitors." And then he tells him about the Duras betrayal. And suddenly we are in Kenneth Branagh Shakespeare territory. And Gowron is just like, oh, and everyone's just like emoting, and they're holding on to things as they speak. And that's what I love about Klingons is that they have their house style of acting, and it's just high Shakespearean drama. It's like this shift suddenly in acting styles and emotions and even the way they speak. And of course Patrick Stewart must devour it because he gets to also suddenly kind of break that icy cold Picard demeanor and kind of be a little more assertive at times. And
yeah, I love it when he actually like slams his fist down on tables and like yells back at a character who's yelling at him. It's like
right. I mean, everybody just you can just tell that everybody just enjoys being in these Klingon episodes. I mean, they're just so much fun, and it's high drama. And but anyways, back to the summary. So go ahead.
Okay, I have to pause the summary for a second because I do have a question. You've raised an idea in my mind because I was thinking about the Klingons in Star Trek Discovery, and I have to say that I think they have that kind of they have that kind of style. You don't? You're like no, really?
No, not at all. No, you know what? It doesn't work when it's not in English.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
I mean, obviously the occasional. Yeah. You know what? It was the classiest way it was done was Star Trek VI, which again, the great Nick Meyer.
Yeah.
You start off in Klingon, and then you cut to the shot of the translator, and then you go to the great Christopher Plummer, and he's in pure Shakespearean mode there with his acting and
yeah.
Don't wait for the translation. Answer the question.
I wouldn't mind if they borrowed from John McTiernan either, and if it was just like a door closes and all of a sudden it goes from Klingon to English. That was an amazing from Russian to English in that situation. Though,
was that not one of the best?
I still think there's a Star Trek story that could bring the spirit of the Hunt for Red October, but it'd be a remake of the Hunt for Red October
with Star Trek. Yeah. Yes. That would have been the only Star Trek movie Sean Connery could have made.
Oh.
Sean Connery as a Starfleet commander.
Or it would be, maybe a Romulan. He could have been a Romulan in this one, or who knows? It could have been a bunch of things because it wouldn't matter because he would still deliver his lines just like this.
He would have been a Scottish Romulan or a Scottish Klingon. He would have been the only Klingon with no makeup. Sean Connery would be like, I do not put on makeup. I am Sean Connery.
They would find a way to
accept me as a Klingon.
I am a Klingon who has been infected by the augment virus. It was invented just for me. Could the augment virus have been invented to entertain having Sean Connery on Star Trek as a Klingon with no makeup? Could that have been the reason behind the augment virus?
So. I think we've discovered it.
We've discovered it at last. I am the last augment. He could be the last augment.
I believe it. I believe it to be true.
Instead of Braveheart, it would be called Flat Forehead. No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I've gone too far. Okay, so we're still summarizing.
I lost track of where I was, so there's no summary, sir.
You get the Duras sisters. You get the Duras kid, Joffrey. You get like insane amounts of drama, and then you get
Worf.
You
Worf
get like
for permission to take a leave of absence,
right?
And he's meeting with his
he
brother.
delays doing a little bit.
No, he does take a leave of absence.
Oh, that's right.
He does take a leave of absence. That's why Picard at that moment is like, did you come back? Remember?
Right.
Because he is on a leave of absence. He's talking to his brother, and his brother's like,
and that's a great, by the way, that's a great scene because the whole debate about the files and then Picard's solution about just, all right, you know what? This is as far as I'll go for you. And he keeps this word.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't do anymore. It's like, so it's already too entangled.
Right. It's muddy.
Yeah. So he releases the files to anyone who wants them, which is fantastic for Worf. And he gets his honor and his name back at the end. Well, it's just one of the endings. There's like 7 endings in this episode, but still, it's
I don't remember how he loses it again. He loses it again, doesn't he?
No, I don't. I think that's good.
No, I think Worf loses it again. I think.
What?
Because why does he wipe Kern's memory in DS9?
Oh, see, I haven't gotten back to that episode yet. I don't remember anything about that. Worf
I don't know
DS9.
why you call yourself Starfleet boy when you just what the hell, man.
There's a difference between having seen everything and having actually watched it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, now we're watching these episodes in ways that we didn't before. We're like engaged with them at a higher level, I think.
The level I always watch. Okay, anyways.
Starfleet Boy is about my passion for Star Trek, and that includes Strange New Worlds and things that are forgotten or things that were glanced over or even never were, exactly, that are now, such as Voyager, where we go on. The Voyager journey is going to be very interesting for me because I know so little about Voyager.
And like Voyager, you'll be on your own.
I don't think I'll be alone
without help from the Gamma Quadrant. Or they're in the Gamma Quadrant, right? No, I'm sorry. Help from the Alpha Quadrant.
I know Scott would at least appear on a few of them, and so I've got some. Oh, and definitely, you know, who grew up on Star Trek Voyager is Sean, so I know he'll be interested in talking about this. So you don't have to be a part of the Voyager journey there, but
and I won't be. I'll do one episode, which is the Sulu one.
Oh, cool! Yeah, okay. I promise you. Here on live on the air, we promised you this episode. Anyways, go.
So what happens? Well, the Duras sisters invite Picard for some Earl Grey tea, which is a great sequence.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Klingon sisters starts like rubbing his scalp. Picard just has like. He's just trying his best not to have any reaction to it, which I thought was great. And then she's trying to give him a refill of the tea, and she gets down on her knees in front of him, in front of his legs, and I'm just like, what? What is this? I mean, yeah. So,
and the frames are shot from Captain Picard's height, so
yeah, so it looks.
You see a lot of the Duras sisters in those.
It looks questionable. Yeah, it looks.
It's a very questionable scene.
Yeah, what are they trying to emphasize in those scenes?
I'm telling you, when I was a kid, I was just so not interested, but now
you're very entertained by their boobs right now. I can tell you.
I'm very entertained by it because I just remember everyone's reactions to it, and it was I don't know if I remember your reaction.
I'm a leg guy, so I'm.
I thought that you saw that, but I mean you saw that differently back then, but
I'm a legs man. I'm if I've been to Duras's legs, maybe, but anyways.
Wowzers. All right. Now we know that the Doctor is a legs man, ladies and gentlemen.
That's more than anybody needs to know. Anyways, thanks for dragging that out of me. Anyways, back to the summary, which never seems to end.
It's the never-ending summary of the Klingon Civil War,
It's a
narrated
never-ending story.
by Sean Connery.
I don't know what happens next. I don't know.
So
there's a lot of Klingon skullduggery.
There's a face-off between
forth.
Gowron. There's a face-off between Gowron and the Duras boy, and it's decided at that point that he will challenge Gowron's right to ascension, and so
that's before.
No, it just at the end. But there's that scene at the end where they, like, he's like, listen, where he's like, all right, this is your last chance.
Picard chooses Gowron. Yeah, Picard says that the boy has shed no blood. He's done nothing. So there's no reason. There's no reason for this boy to lead.
But they challenge. They continue to challenge.
Everyone who had already, most of the council was stacked against him, anyways. So all these people decide to go with the Duras sisters, and the Klingon Civil War effectively begins when they attack the ship, and Worf is on board the ship.
This is when the Enterprise steps away, and then Kern comes in to save the day, and so that's it. Oh, and then the end. So we're trying to get to the end of the summary. So then finally, after the battle is over and Gowron is still alive, there's that scene where Worf resigns his commission, which is a big deal, which we talked about already, but we'll talk about it again because
that's a great scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene. And then he leaves with Gowron, and then that's when you have the reveal of Sela, who we'll find out a lot more about at the beginning of next season. we can't give everything away.
Absolutely. That scene where Picard, where Worf and Gowron are trying to convince Picard that the Federation needs to step in and help with the Civil War, is phenomenal, because when Worf just puts the communicator down on the table, and you get that shot of Picard at the end of the table, and his face is just priceless. It's like, what are you doing? Like, what? No. But it's really, Picard in many ways led him there. Picard is the one that walked in and said, "This needs a Klingon response." Okay, now we have the hunt for Red October here. Everyone is so confused, but
sorry, I just had to. I couldn't resist. Go
on. So yeah, it really Picard is the architect of much of what happens here, because Worf, if there is an alternate reality where Picard never walks in the room and Worf just continues to sulk on board the Enterprise until the Civil War breaks out again, and he would not really have had an opportunity to get involved because he's on the Enterprise.
Right.
And his brother, I guess, maybe his brother gets killed or something, because his brother wasn't going to join Gowron either. His brother was going to be his own guy. So Picard really is sort of an unwitting architect to a lot of what happens in this episode. And
I remember this kind of episode marks a change in his prominence as a figure in the greater story of Starfleet too. I think we start to get, like, next season, Ensign Rowe, and then the Bajorans. Like this is kind of like where his, like, the negotiating captain, like the diplomat captain, if you will, starts to solidify, and we see a lot more stories like that, I think, where he's directly involved in some kind of, like, Starfleet affair.
When you say history, I think this episode also proves a turning point in another way, which is, I guess, the decision by the people making Star Trek to effectively use the Klingons as the engine of history in Star Trek for much of its time. Even up until now, because really, when you think about it, even though Star Trek is supposed to be us, humanity's future.
Right.
We know very little about what's happening on Earth. We know nothing, next to nothing, about what's happening on Earth. It's not until Deep Space Nine that we really get any glimpse of Earth, and then skip ahead to Enterprise, and we get something of what happened in the past. But Next Generation gives us very little about Earth's history, and the Federation itself seems to not be an engine of history. Let's say the movements are happening with Klingons. We have the Klingon Civil War here. Later on, we have the Klingons attacking the Federation on DS9. When Star Trek 6 is about the Klingon, Praxis exploding, and what do we do about the Klingons? It's almost like, when you want to have a momentous event happen on Star Trek, it's 9 times out of 10, it's about Klingons. It's not about humans,
right?
Which is very interesting. And
I think there's a practical reason for doing that, which is like it kind of will. People become, I think, too focused on like, well, is that going to happen or is that not going to happen kind of scenario. If you do too many stories on Earth, it would be like, oh, maybe. I think it's nice to keep Earth a mystery if if you're doing a science fiction TV show, like I kind of like the way TNG dealt with it. Now we have all kinds of knowledge of a gash in Florida and like all this superfluous knowledge about about Earth history, which just further removes Star Trek from being plausible as a future for humanity. It paints it as a story that's
Correct.
told about, it's like that's what I guess I'm saying.
Right. Right. That's the double-edged sword there, is that, it's the idea of like, well, Star Trek could still be true. It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
But forwards, the thing with Sherlock Holmes, the appeal is that Sherlock Holmes could be real.
Right.
Arthur Conan Doyle could have been writing about somebody who was Sherlock Holmes in the Victorian times.
Which he was sort of writing about that with Dr. Bell, like
precisely. So, but I mean, could have been an actual Sherlock Holmes, right? I mean, that's
no, it's true.
Our we can do that in our head, in our imagination.
Yeah, that's right. Correct.
It's set up in a way so we can easily believe it if we really wanted to, which is the dilemma with that Sherlock crap that I don't watch. The Consulting Detective, it destroys that. But with Star Trek, that's part of the fantasy, is that if you really want to imagine it, that could be our future. I mean, thanks to Trump, we could still have the eugenics wars or something. Who knows? I mean, it's still possible, folks.
What year the eugenics war is supposed to take place in? Let's
take a look. Happened in the 90s, so
we're past it. Star Trek already failed. Star Trek failed.
Sliding time scale, folks.
Star Trek failed as a template for humanity.
It's all over. It'll never happen. Sorry.
We're post Star Trek. Anyways,
we meet the Vulcans next year, don't we?
It's coming up. No, it's not that soon.
No, it's 21. What is it? 2153 or something?
Oh, you know the date. I'm impressed. I don't think I.
No, I do not know the date.
What is the date of first contact?
I do not know the date, please. Anyhow,
it's November 22nd, 1996. No, that's not right. That's the day the movie came.
That's
That's hilarious. Oh, here we go. I have to know now. I have to know. Let's see. Memory Alpha says that it occurs in 2063. So there's lots of time. No.
No, there isn't.
There isn't lots of time.
Are we alive in that time frame?
Oh, now I have to figure that out. Hey Siri, how old is... Hold on. Wait. Hey Siri, how old will I be in 2063?
Siri
I
knows
can't
this.
accept that info for you here.
Wow.
Siri can answer that question for you.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how does Siri know how old you are?
You can tell. I think if you fill out, there's a little thing you fill out. It asks you for your age, isn't there?
I don't know. I don't own one of those things. You do.
Siri, I thought I filled out a questionnaire, but I could be imagining. It's like there's like settings you have to tell your computer all the time, like about yourself when
Right.
you're creating your card. You don't have a card. You don't have an identification card on your computer.
No.
Oh. Well, Starfleet
I
boys,
don't. I don't want the Russians to steal that from me.
they've already stolen it. They already have everything. They
They
have
do already have
the entire.
everything.
They have the entire. If anyone thinks that our data is secure,
It's
from
been long gone, folks.
been gone for a long time.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
You can look how easily on Star Trek you can steal data from the from anyone. We never solved this problem, people.
Isn't it funny? The Federation has information. Starfleet has information that it was not that it was not Worf's father.
Oh yeah, this is a heavy subject. It's
but
yeah,
but yet I don't understand why didn't they ever just I don't understand why it was never shared before this episode.
it's
I
just
don't understand.
It's protocol, man. You have to understand. You were in the Security Council in high school. How could you not understand?
I don't see it took this event. No, seriously, you know, there's got to be some cooperation between the intelligence services of the Klingons and Starfleet.
My understanding is that the relationship between Starfleet and
It's
the
an
Klingons
alliance.
mirrors, but it mirrors kind of like the loose sort of relationship between the EU and I guess the Russian Empire. which is no longer an empire.
Not true.
Are you sure?
My impression is that Starfleet and the Klingons are more like the U.S. and Europe.
Really?
That was the impression I was, but apparently we're not. I mean, they're not because, I mean,
no, I always thought it was a tense relationship. I do like that we get, of course, all the answers filled in about that in Star Trek 6, I think, in many ways of like how the relationship began and like probably the tone of it. But TNG, of course, takes it further. But I don't remember. I don't think the Klingon. I mean, because later in DS9, what I do remember is the big thing with the Klingons going to war with the Federation. Wasn't there a thing?
Yeah, but that's all the way in DS9. It's like
but
7 years later.
No, I think that's what I'm trying to say is that I always did feel that the Klingons and the Federation had like a very like tense relationship. I didn't think of it as like a.
But
that's
my point. Is that as of starting now. Yeah, that's the impression I get. But leading up to this moment, remember, the first time we saw a Klingon on Next Generation, it had a Federation banner next to the Klingon banner. Remember, we pointed that out. That was way back in season 1. Then, you have Kalar and all this stuff, and it just seemed like the Klingons, they have an exchange program. I'm like, dude, they're kind of, they're chummier than expected. But then all of a sudden here, we sort of begin to see that it's not as chummy as we thought. And
I don't think so. I think Galron represents that Klingon empire that you just talked about. But I think you're right that the Duras faction, this whole other side of Klingons that are kind of like, I think this is kind of this remain Klingon idea, but not as like, hit you over the head with it, if you will. There's the Klingons that want the Empire to be the ultimate power in the quadrant or in the galaxy, even. Like that's what they don't think, that like an alliance with the Federation is the way.
The storm.
The storm. I don't think that, I think that's the whole thing that maybe isn't quite. I saw it anyways. I saw that in there.
Well, I think we definitely see it going. And again, I say
Forward,
this is
yeah.
a turning point going forward. But I think they were still kind of going back and forth because, like I said, remember those three Klingons they woke up. The whole thing is that they're all like old-fashioned Klingons, like Star Trek 3 Klingons. But the Klingons are supposed to be much calmer now. But now we see here that, well, they're not so calm. They're still rowdy, and I think that's why people love them so much. I think really this episode kind of cements Klingons as just it. I think it's the apex of Klingon mania. I think these two episodes. I think really on the original show, you did have Klingons appear, but it's not until Next Generation that we get the cosplaying as Klingons, let's start making books in Klingon. Let's start learning the language.
Didn't the dictionary come out around the time of Star Trek 3, the Klingon English dictionary? Is that
right? Well,
right?
Okay. No, it had the cover. The cover had a picture from Star Trek 3.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It had, but this is around the time where we start getting stuff like the Klingon dictionary and stuff,
which I bought on paperback. I still
remember. I remember. And people start buying the pins. So this is kind of Klingon fever amongst Star Trek fans, I feel.
Well,
maybe
I feel
I'm
like
wrong.
I mean, it's easy to see why the Klingons are cool. Is like as much as like I'm a Federation man myself, and a Starfleet man at that, Starfleet boy. You can see the appeal of the Klingons, because there's something about that warrior like conquest thing that's very appealing to, especially I think to men. But I think what do you think? Do the Duras sisters bring women into the Klingon fold also in a way that hadn't been before on Star Trek? I think they do. I think that's interesting.
We need a woman that we need to, I don't know. I don't know.
To me, I remember what I remember about the Duras sisters, other than their connivingness, which they never fail on. They're constantly conniving throughout Star Trek. Though, but I remember seeing more cosplayers dressing up as them too. Do you not recall now? Like,
yeah, I do recall that. Yes,
it's true. So, the Star Trek 5 Klingon outfit also was very interesting.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Wonderful muscles.
Hey, that's a very good Chekhov. Very nice.
But yeah, again,
Speaking of Star Trek 5, today's the release date anniversary.
Today's the release
Our
date
last time we got together, Doctor. The last time we got together was to talk about Star Trek 5. So little Starfleet boy continuity there. That was good.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know. The Klingons are a complicated mess, I think, as far as Star Trek goes, because the more I think about it now, with all these examples that we've been talking about, is that they've also been probably the most like experimented with in terms of like how they're written and how they're conveyed on screen. That's just like a bold statement there, but
it is.
But I'm recalling several instances, like we can start with the original series example, of course, and go all the way to Enterprise. And it feels like there's constantly experimentation with like trying to explain things and like reconcile them with the way they were and the way they are, and like all these kinds of things. And then Star Trek Discovery just adds to that, in my opinion, with more complications about how Klingons are perceived and portrayed and things like that. So yeah, I gravitate towards that. I think the Klingons need to be given a rest.
Well, I mean, but they don't give them a rest. They are the default setting when you want to make something grandiose in Star Trek history. I mean, even Discovery. Discovery starts off with something Klingon related. Right. We it's not something that happens on Earth. It's not something that happens within Starfleet. It's Klingons. So the pilot of Enterprise, Klingons. They are the engine of history in Star Trek's fictional universe for one reason or another.
Yeah, it's true.
So I just and I think this episode kind of, I mean, well, this and the part two really established that, and you can see why, because they just lend themselves to that. I mean, they're so rich in characterizations and the costumes. I mean, Garon, he comes aboard the Enterprise with that cloak
awesome
he's got. That's just something. You're referencing Game of Thrones. It is something out of Game of Thrones. It's
well, no, I recognize. I feel like I have no idea, if like subconsciously Game of Thrones writers were influenced at all by Star Trek, but it's very possible because episodes like this kind of have that same drama, the intensity of drama that Game of Thrones offers. Like I felt that for sure in this episode, and in many ways rewatching it gave me anxiety and tension and all the emotions, even though I knew what happens, and I thought, oh, that reminds me of Game of Thrones, especially just the idea that this kid they could have gone in the direction where the kid actually wins the Empire, and the Duras sisters make good on their promise of not aligning, with the Federation anymore. So that would have been a very different and interesting season. Season 5, 6, 7, whatever else you wanted to go in for TNG, but that's not what happens.
No. Now we've talked a lot about Klingons. Let us talk now about Romulans.
Yes, let's talk about the Romulans. What is there to say about the Romulans?
What is there to say about the Romulans?
Except that they're sneaky little bastards. They're they're very, very tricky. I do love that the Romulans are behind the Duras plot. I kind of it's because it's been a relationship that they've established since Kittimer, really. So it's kind of a cool thing, and it's kind of like, I don't know. They don't go to battle with the Federation. That's just not going to happen. I think the Romulans know that there's too many Federation worlds, too many allies. I mean, the thing you don't see in just going to kind of zooming out into the, I guess, what limited knowledge I have of the world of Star Trek, if you will, just kind of trying to piece that together. The Federation is the most powerful force when you take all of the Federation worlds, the major home worlds into account, because you have the Andorians, which are formidable. You have, the Tellarites that are formidable, and these are stories that we don't see in the Next Generation, but they're happening in the background. So I think the Romulans would never go to war with the Federation without the Klingons as their allies. It makes complete sense.
Well, it just showed. I mean, I remember, I was very excited when Sela showed up. And again, because I just thought, oh, okay, goody. The Romulans are finally going to come to the fore here. And it seems like we've been kind of building up to this. We just had the episode with Geordi, where he was kidnapped by the Romulans.
Yeah, that's right.
We'd had couple of Romulan episodes beforehand, the traitor one where he thinks he's giving information to the Federation, but it was all crap. And it's been a slow build with the Romulans, and I still feel that when I see, you hear them, they're out there. In the original watching of the series, at this point I still felt that we were working our way towards something with the Romulans, and I was very engaged with that, and then seeing Sela made me think, okay, I mean, if you're going to bring back Denise Crosby, it's got to be for something big. So she's going to be like a semi-regular, right?
That's true. That's
what
true.
Naive, whatever 9th grade or 10th grade Humbert thought. But
I don't remember having those like specific expectations, but I do remember being excited that the Romulans were finally a part of the game, if you will. the entry of the Romulans. And I think, like, of course, Denise Crosby's return was pretty awesome. I was always a fan of Tasha, the character, and so I was like, if you can be a fan of a character who is, of course, portrayed by the lovely Denise Crosby. And so when she came back, it was not just a shocker, but it also, as we find out very quickly, ties in an amazing previous episode, where we find out that Tasha, in an alternate timeline, is sent back into the history of an event that would affect her later on without her knowing.
Very, very timey-wimey.
Later on without him knowing it.
Very, very timey-wimey. But of course, we don't know that until later. But yeah, at this moment, we're just in the state of we're just perplexed. We're just like, what is this? How is this possible?
And so, I think, do you think they're also setting the stage here in some way to bring Alexander back onto the show?
Oh, because of what Guinan was saying.
What Guinan was saying, like, I felt like that might have been something, something there in that scene.
Well, Alexander is one of those characters that I think the show didn't really know what to do with quite.
What do you do with awkward teenagers? No one knows what to do. No one.
They had just gotten rid of Wesley, and for whatever reasons, Wesley bore the brunt of a lot of fan backlash and ire. And so I don't think the show was ready to commit to having another underage character. And I personally cannot imagine having endured Alexander for the rest of Next Generation. I mean, it just thinking of the episodes that Alexander is in, most of them are not very good. So I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, Guinan brings him up, but
it's tough though, because you're trying to make a show about real life in the future, in one sense, right? Because Gene Roddenberry was trying to portray like life in the future, and so you have to kind of take this idea of like children do exist. It's like one of those things, like you kind of have to sprinkle childhood as a storyline into your depiction of the future.
Well, the D is designed to have families,
right? Exactly. So I think
Worf could have had Alexander on the ship.
It's true.
He just chose not to.
Yeah,
which shows him to be a bit of a dick. Which Guinan was kind of making that point. She's like, Klingons do laugh. You just don't laugh because you're a jerk.
You're a jerk.
You're kind of a pompous,
oh my god,
self-important jerk.
Poor Worf, man. He's so misunderstood by non-Klingons.
Wouldn't you be angry? Don't let me be misunderstood.
Wouldn't you be angry all the time if you had to deal with people that didn't understand like your behavior, but also you yourself don't understand your behavior because you've only been around these people that don't understand your behavior?
Welcome to my life. My life every day.
You're a Klingon. It sounds like you're a Klingon. John Jew. Maybe what is it? Maltz. John Jew.
John Jew. Yeah.
It sounds like you're sneezing. That's what to me. So yeah. But all of that is the reason why this episode is awesome. But I think the best thing for me this time around was just watching Patrick Stewart just devour the the scenery, if you will.
Well, we cannot. Okay, we're talking about Patrick Stewart, but what about the actor who plays Garon, which I believe is Robert Riley, I believe is his name, and that guy, Garon, has got to be my favorite Klingon, even beating Worf, because I mean he just comes on with those eyes. And that voice.
No, Gowron is the most interesting Klingon of all time, still today. Like no one has surpassed.
Still today, no one has surpassed
Gowron. It's true. I would agree.
He's in the top 3.
Yeah,
he's up there with Christopher Lloyd and
he's the best actor to portray Klingon. I mean, just even like his physicality is amazing. Like it's intense and amazing, and just like he's an amazing performer. And you don't realize there's a human there, which is the reason why it's like
it's like he just wakes up in the morning and boom, he's a Klingon.
And he's a Klingon. It's I think he also sells. That's what I'm saying. I guess is that Gowron also sells that he's an alien. Look, 100%. The actor, Mr. 100%. Riley, you sold it 100%. In fact, so much so that I don't know if I would recognize.
I don't.
The actor outside of makeup. Oh my gosh, what a horrible thing to say. Well, let's see what he looks like.
Is this a slideshow?
We're gonna go slideshow.
Slideshow that didn't happen.
Oh wow, this is not even humanly possible. I've seen. He is a chameleon, Robert O'Reilly. This is impressive. Take a look at this. Wait, let me get a. Oh, this is kind of neat. There's a. We're about to show a website.
Before and after.
Yeah, so this is a website called The Geek Twins. I know nothing about it, but there's a cool pictorial which is attached to an article about the 16 most surprising Star Trek Klingon transformations of all time. So we have to examine this for a moment. We're going to have a moment. Speaking of which, we haven't read from your book about aliens in a long time. What happened to that?
Oh, I never got them. I don't know.
Oh, no.
I gotta contact the guy. I don't know what happened there.
There's the very handsome Michael Dorn, who turns into, for a Klingon, I think a very handsome Klingon as well. That's such a horrible. I would be so. It
is quite a transformation. I mean, you look at that guy, and you don't really see Worf. It is quite Michael amazing. Dorn.
Yeah. And here we have Christopher Plummer, who also is quite a transformation, but you do retain. Christopher Plummer, and I noticed his ridges are very soft.
Yeah, that would have been what the Sean Connery Klingon would have resembled somewhat,
except with no makeup at all.
With no he would have had maybe the iron eye patch, but nothing else.
I think Sean Connery is an actor that can pull it off with the hair, though. Like no makeup, but if he did the hair the right way, I think he can pull off Klingon, a believable Klingon.
His medicine man hair.
David Warner, who we love on the show,
and he looks like David Warner in makeup.
But there's quite a transformation there. But yeah, also very soft.
David Warner, yeah.
And there's Robert O'Reilly, which I'm very impressed at because he doesn't have those crazy Gowron eyes, so he must have been like intentionally like widening his eyes to do that, which is great. And then there's Gwyneth Walsh, who plays B'Etor, who we see in this episode. I don't know if they're going to show Lursa. I hope they do. There's Kaylair, the lovely Susie Plaxton. Look at her.
Yeah.
And then there's Rosanna DeSoto. I know. As it were.
Wow.
John Kalikos. Classic.
The classic Klingon.
The original, some might say. Some might say. And then also another actor who played a classic Klingon, Martok, right?
Martok.
No. Yeah, Martok's Yep. Mr. Hertzler, J.G. Hertzler. And then there's Kevin Conway, who plays Kalis the Unforgettable. Oh, look, John Shuck.
Yeah.
Klingon ambassador. I forgot that John Larroquette.
Mm-hmm. That was him.
3. I totally forgot. That's an amazing Klingon forehead there. There's Tony Todd.
Yeah, but why do they call him unnamed Star Trek? He played Kern.
They should show Kern here, but I think that the Geek Twins chose to emphasize maybe that he's in the Kelvin timeline as a Klingon as well. I wonder. Anyways, interesting. We maybe if the Geek Twins listen to our show, they can answer that question for us. There's Christopher Lloyd.
Marty.
I've become a Klingon. There's Lursa, who I was wondering if we would see Barbara Marsh.
Michael and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
The great Michael and Sarah, who was on Buck Rogers. He was
what did you since we're on the subject of him and the other original Klingons, what did you think about them upgrading them with in DS9? They returned in that Dax episode, and now all of a sudden they have like full Klingon ridges.
You
had problems, right?
I had questions. I had questions. At that point, Star Trek had done such a good job of explaining things. For them to have one thing they couldn't explain wasn't so bad.
Right, one thing that you have to imagine and create.
And also, we did have an explanation because we had Dead of Honor.
Oh, can you remind me?
Which was the comic book, remember?
No, I know, but can you remind me what the explanation was?
In Dead of Honor, which the episode contradicts, but in Dead of Honor, it was actually the Discovery explanation, which is that there were two
that's right,
races of sub races of Klingons, and the ones with the ridges eventually ascended to be the ones in charge, and those without the ridges were the ones that sort of fell from grace. And in Dead of Honor, you had Kang joining Kirk to sort of, as one final hurrah for his Klingons, to kind of try to regain some glory for them. But of course, then we had DS9, and we're like, well, Kang has ridges. So I guess they pissed all over Dead of Honor. But
well, that's one of the reasons I think I try to stay away from try, and I fail a lot of times, don't get me wrong, because it's such a rich universe in the expanded kind of like the novels and the books and everything like that. But I do think that one thing I see among fans such as yourself that invested a lot of time in the expanded universe is that you are inevitably disappointed by the show, in much the way that I'm feeling about Star Trek Discovery, where you eventually, the show's the rule, right? So anything you've invested your time and so on into. So now Star Trek Discovery seems to be in many ways challenging the visual story of Star Trek, like in the sense of like, is it breaking like any kind of like fundamental like story arcs or like important things? No, it's not harming the overall Star Trek world or stage or story at all. But it is challenging, I think, for me, in a big way, is like my expectation of what Star Trek looks like, like the aesthetic of Star Trek. And I think that's something that, like, I think we all eventually, as these things live longer, as the Doctor says in the 11th, my favorite Doctor, the 11th Doctor, you can live too long.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer Star Trek lives, which it looks like at this, from this perspective, it's going to live a very, very long life. The more it's going to look different from how it started, and that's just life.
Well, speaking of the expanded canon. There's a novel called Imzadi 2 Triangle. And the premise of that one is that Sela takes another crack at Gowron.
Oh.
And tries to assassinate him with Romulan ale. And she employs none other than Thomas Riker.
Oh, crap.
And as a matter of fact, her and Thomas Riker have a thing.
That would have been a great story to have on the show. But see, it's never to be now, Doctor. I did like the scene. Speaking of Riker, I did like the scene in this episode where when Picard backs away from the battle to go in and help Gowron, Riker looks genuinely like concerned that they're not going to stay behind for Worf. And then it switches to Worf, who's very capable, of course. And I think that's why Picard probably wasn't worried at the end. And he takes, he does some cool evasive maneuvers in that little battle scene.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the scene in this episode where how proud Picard looks when Worf gets his honor back, which you're claiming, which I can't remember, gets taken away again, which is terrible. I forgot that. I thought this was it for him. I thought this was the end of that story.
Something else happens. I can't really recall right now. But I'll say this is that we cannot end this without, of course, mentioning the Klingon at the center of all this, which is Michael Dorn. For all intents and purposes, he was not he was a supporting character starting in season 1. He was not intended to be a major character. And if you watch the documentary that comes with the Blu-ray of the episode, none other than our favorite Trek expert, Larry Nemecek, Nemecek, sorry, is there to explain how he tells the story of how Roddenberry actually did not like the idea of this two-parter because his objection was that Worf is not one of the main actors. They're not one of the main characters.
Yeah,
you can't do a two-story on someone who was not one of the main characters, which is interesting to think about how television evolved from the old Star Trek to the new Star Trek. Because, when you think about it, the original Star Trek, really maintained the focus on, Kirk, Spock, McCoy at times.
Right. You
had Sulu, Uhura, and Scotty and Chekhov, but they were always supporting characters. Always. You did have a few Scotty episodes, and maybe you had a little bit more to do for Uhura here or Sulu there, but they were always stuck in supporting roles.
But I think as a show runs, like, inevitably, that's also kind of dictated by the response from the audience, and I think that's why Worf wins the day,
Exactly.
Michael Dorn wins the day, is that I think that Precisely. I do remember, like, obviously it's a credit to his phenomenal skills and as an actor that he brought this character to life in a way that, like, resonates with audiences. So, huge kudos to Michael Dorn. But yeah, this is, again, like, I think going back to earlier, what you said is, like, Klingons are just there's something very interesting about a Klingon, it's like, which is why, like, I think it's going to be tough to dethrone them as the central and how did you describe it? The engine of Star Trek history. Mm-hmm. I feel it's going to be interesting if we can ever see another template through which we can look at those things through.
I mean, and a lot of credit has to go to Michael Dorn because he's the one that sold Worf, made Worf relevant.
Did you hear that Michael Dorn was being courted to be on I feel like this may only be a rumor and never confirmed. I never confirmed whether it was true or not, but the rumor was that Michael Dorn was being courted to be on Star Trek Discovery, but I don't have any idea who he would have played except for Takuvma. Or was there a whole other idea about him as a Klingon character?
I don't know. I think we have yet to know how Discovery came together. I think there's a book to be written about what really happened.
I really hope Larry Nemecek is the man who gets that assignment. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, me too.
He's already done everything else. He may as well.
Yeah.
May as well do Discovery too. So it'll feel complete as a collector.
But going back to Michael Dorn, I think this story cemented him as one of the trilogy of the main characters that Next Generation will explore. I mean, over the course of Next Generation, it's Picard, Data, and really Worf. They're sort of up there. Riker is kind of there because he is the subject. You can say he's the subject of a two-parter. Because really, Best of Both Worlds is just as much about Riker as it is Picard or anybody else.
Yeah, I feel like what's great about the Next Generation though is that I don't think those like levels are as clearly defined beyond Picard, Data, and Worf. After that, it's kind of like everyone's on the same playing field more or less. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I would say even Picard and Data dominate. If there is a separation, it's like Picard and Data, and then Worf, and then everyone else is just kind of like equally.
Oh no, I think Worf is up there with Data and Picard.
Really?
I really do. I mean, even if you look at the movies, Worf is the one who breaks out in many of those movies in terms of he gets a subplot, he gets action.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about Worf is that he is a character that I think is poised to be like, in many ways, how Spock has been. What's a Klingon lifespan? We determined this at one point, but it's probably a little longer than a human's lifespan. So he can kind of probably, there's still time. There's plenty of time for Michael Dorn to usher in, like, do in many ways what like Spock kind of did to bridge the two series before. And Michael Dorn, if we are graced with like a future Star Trek story, that would be amazing. But I think maybe to answer my question from earlier, like that was probably an intention behind trying to court Michael Dorn to be on Star Trek Discovery, if that was even a real thing.
Now let me ask you a question. And I don't know, I'm asking this with trepidation because I don't feel you have fully experienced the audios as much as I have. But
no, I know I haven't. That's true.
I mean, I've played Doctor Who audios for you, and you've enjoyed them.
Very much.
Don't you think that Star Trek, and especially Next Generation, would benefit from having audio adventures a la Doctor Who and Dark Shadows and Blake 7, all these other sci-fi properties?
Are you telling me right now that that's not a thing for Star Trek already? Like there are not?
No, there are no Star Trek. No, who makes? Where are there Star Trek audios? Who's making them?
Wow.
No, there aren't. I mean, there's audio books, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying full cast audios.
Audio dramas. You're talking about audio dramas.
Right. I'm talking audio dramas which these other sci-fi, even Stargate and Highlander, they fill in gaps, and they'll bring the original actors back, and they're portraying their characters.
William Shatner doesn't do audio dramas for Star Trek?
No. No. Have you heard them?
No, I feel like I would always be listening to them. That's true.
There we go.
Star Trek audio.
There's audio books, but there are no Star Trek audio dramas.
No, I understand. Baffled right now. The universe I came from, had Star Trek audio dramas in
the Richard Marquand universe.
The Richard Marquand universe. I'm having a moment right now.
You're having a moment. But do you think that's
how could there not be Star Trek audio dramas?
Because they don't have they don't.
You would know. I trust you. You would know. This is not something you would miss.
I am saying
I would miss it.
Don't you think Star Trek would benefit from audio dramas?
Yeah, there should be a huge audio division on Star Trek. I would totally buy them. Like, I'm already admitting that part of my liberty would go to these.
I would like to formally make a petition here on Starfleet Boy. Fans, beg whoever owns Star Trek. I don't know who owns Star Trek anymore.
It's a corporation that owns Star Trek at this point, probably.
Well, no, but you know, Paramount apparently is trying to buy CBS. Did you know that?
Oh, do you think it's over Star Trek?
Well, Paramount owns the movies.
Oh.
And they want to buy CBS, in which case they would own everything.
I love what Paramount does with Star Trek. So frankly, I'm in.
I'm
so
in
far,
too.
CBS has been disappointing with what they do with Star Trek, in my opinion. So I think Paramount should.
Likewise, I agree. So
that would be a wonderful thing.
I would like to see.
Where's the Paramount flag with the mountain?
Yeah. All right. So shall we give it well, we've given it the rating already.
Given it a rating. So, no, but are there any other talking points that you feel are important from this episode? I think we covered everything. We talked about the Duras sisters. We talked about the Romulans. We talked about how we felt back then, which is not even necessary, but we talked about it. And we talked about, of course, the Klingons, which you can't, in general, and like their context.
The cinematography once again is top notch. There's the sequences on the Klingon homeworld are just shot in such a way that there's a lot of dark, use of shadows. You know, when Picard enters the apartment of the Duras sisters and he's framed so perfectly, he looks like he's entering a trap.
The whole show's quality gets better as it gets closer to its last season. And Absolutely. What's neat is that like the aesthetic just keeps getting better in Deep Space Nine and in the films. I think even you might question it, but I do think that like the show gets darker, but I do think it's like realistic in terms of like the way the bridge is lit and things like that. Like if you're spending a lot of time in space, you want to have like these like kind of very cozy and comfortable situations. I don't know, it just makes sense to me. Because the movies, they only show us when there's like a problem, right? But like in between there's 10 years of like just exploration. Like there's gotta be comfortable, right? Like there's like gaps of time where they're just not doing anything but cataloging gaseous anomalies and like
No, sir, that's Voyager.
That's Voyager.
Which we saw.
So comfortable lighting is an A+ for me. Do you know that if I did have the resources to like kind of build an Enterprise set here, I would do the Enterprise D. You would have the actual Starfleet Boy background would be my quarters aboard the Enterprise D.
No, I would totally. That would not be me at all.
I'm gonna have to talk to some designers and see if we can get a set background that's more appropriate as we go into season 5.
That would involve a green screen, and I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, we'll see. I have some ideas, Doctor. You just bear with me here. Before we do end this episode, which we've already rated, and if you didn't hear the rating, it was a unanimous 10. We'd love to hear what you think of the episode, so please feel free to chime in below in the comments, or if you prefer to be on, you can contact me at Sohail at starfleetboy.com and let me know what your recording availability is, and we'll let you know what the next episode that's available is, and we can go from there. And then also, please tune in to our podcast, which is, I have to do this, Doctor. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Do show.
Tune into the podcast, which is available on iTunes for download, or if you go to starfleetboy.com, which is totally not updated at this moment, or depending on when you're seeing this moment, is completely updated, which is the beauty of television or radio. So I don't know. It could be updated. It could not be updated. It just depends when you hear this.
Timey-wimey.
Timey-wimey. So go check out starfleetboy.com to see if we're updated. Let me know if we are. And also I want to give an important shout out to the Starfleet Boy regulars who are not here on a regular basis. Thank you very much for helping me make the show. And now we're finished, Doctor, with season 4. This marks the completion of our journey this far. Yeah. So we have completed season 4 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm very excited about going into season 5. Which I think you'll want to be a part of many episodes, because I know you like to skip the bad ones, but I remember there's a lot of good ones.
You say so.
Is it not?
I'll be here for the next one, that's for sure.
That's for sure. All right, so over and out. We'll see you next time. Live long and prosper. Kapla.